All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here be doing a preview and prediction for a ranked matchup in the Pac-12. USC, undefeated Trojans, take on a two-loss Utah team coming off a loss to the UCLA Bruins. Number 7 versus number 20 here. 63 is the over-under. USC's a 3.5-point favorite on the road here at Rice-Eccles Stadium in Salt Lake City. 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. Trojans lead the series all-time 13-7. Look at this USC offense. Nick Lincoln Riley shows up, implements all this newfound talent in the transfer portal, his new system. It's really taken LA by storm. They've been pretty dynamite. They've certainly had their bumps and struggles, but one thing they've not done is turned over the football. Caleb Williams, 1 pick. That's pretty much it. They lead the nation in turnover margin for a reason. They've been, completely lights out. They do have, 0 fumbles as well. So they're protecting the football. They're getting it to all their playmakers. Travis Dye, the Oregon transfer, 571 and 6 touchdowns. Austin Jones, he's been really good as a runner, 6.8 yards per carry. Caleb Williams, he did his job as a runner as well. Riley Brown, the 5-star true freshman that followed Riley from Norman to here. He's been very good with his touches as well. Caleb Williams, he seems to be playing with a lot of confidence. 65% completion rate, 1,590 yards. He's been a great playmaker for them. There's certainly been battle tested at times. Jordan Addison, they were unable to get him the ball against Oregon State. But his speed is certainly showcased this year. Almost 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. Mario Williams, the 2 transfers, really taking lead. After that, it's kind of by committee. Dye's been getting the ball. Taj Washington, Brendan Rice. Plenty of talent to go around in this receiving core. And, on this offense as a whole, for me, they certainly had to struggle some game against Oregon State. Only scored 17 in that game. Vertically, they could not pass the ball one big. Williams, 44% completion rate, 180 yards. That final drive, they were able to put it in the end zone. Jordan Addison, off a great throw from Caleb Williams. They against Washington State, a very good defense. A lot of people are underrating. It's got a lot of veterans, a lot of depth. Only scored 30 there, completed 51%. The USC offense has been good. I wouldn't exactly call it great here over the last few weeks as they've entered conference play. How do you feel about this unit? How do you assess this offense, Nick? Because it's certainly been a little bumpy here as of late. But, everything is there for these guys to certainly thrive.
I think this offense has been solid so far this season. 40.2 points per game. Not bad at all. 278.5 yards per game passing, 183.3 yards per game rushing. You'd like to see that number potentially rise a little bit. Maybe they get the running game.
A good season. But outside of that, it's really
been just Dye on the ground with the ball. He has 90 carries for 571 yards plus 6 touchdowns. I like the amount of carries he's getting, but I like to see it maybe get some more to Austin Jones or Malik Brown as well. The two of them only have combined 52 total attempts on the season, and they're together. They're about 300 yards on the ground. Caleb Williams is doing exactly what we thought he would do with the talent he has. Almost 1,600 passing yards plus 65% completion percentage. Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, both talented receivers. Addison, if he gets locked up, though, it does pose a problem for this offense. They seem to have to find someone else who's going to have to step up. Taj Washington, Brendan Rice, these are guys that need to step up. Karan Hudson as well. He has been very quiet so far this season, only 7 receptions. I'd like to see him target a little bit more, especially if they can't get the ball to Addison early on in the game against Utah.
You look at an offensive line, they under Clay Helton, it was just a disaster. They could not do much up front. Last year, they actually, after he got fired, were pretty good. Pretty strange that happens. They got 3 guys, though, on the interior. Andrew Voorhees, Brent Nylon, Justin Dedich. All these guys are seniors, redshirt seniors at that. Those guys are pretty stout. They're pretty good. But you look at, on the tackle side of things, 2 redshirt sophomores. And those guys have certainly struggled. Caleb Williams has really had to be a magician at times. He's phenomenal at doing it. He has great poise, great abilities on the run. So that's really one thing that's really built this offense out. But offensive line has still certainly struggled. I know they're, Lincoln Riley, one thing he kind of wants to make a point of is trying to ground and pound some of his opponents. And they certainly, kind of did that. I think, 5.2 yards per carry. Like you said, with the rushing total numbers, it's pretty respectable. USC kind of winning on the ground. With the offensive line, they still have a lot of work to do. Facing a pretty good defensive line. It's kind of been disappointing for Utah. But still, this offensive line is a long way to go. Caleb Williams can only continue to keep making so many plays before they start taking sacks that are really going to put this offense behind. How do you feel and assess this offensive front? Because I think they're making some good progress, but still, when you watch this game, they're still giving up plenty of negative plays, even if it doesn't, register on the stat sheet.
Right, I think this offensive line is certainly getting better as the season goes on, but like you said, the negative plays are there. Caleb Williams has been sacked 11 times so far this season. The pressure is getting there at times, but he's been able to escape the pressure and make plays if he needs to. He's going to run a little bit as well. The 178 yards on the ground for him, being able to get out of the pocket if necessary, 3 touchdowns on the ground for him. I think the progress is certainly there with this offense, and they're going to continue to improve as the season progresses. It will only get better with time. I like the talent they have. It's really strong, and this USC team has a lot left in the tank for me. I think they continue to improve.
Looking at the Utah offense, their defense was getting gassed so bad they were unable to keep up and stick to their game plan. But they knew what it was. I think 12 carries Tavion Thomas had, in that first 20-minute part of the game. Ended up with 18 touches for 91 yards, over 5 yards per carry. They really brought the physicality to UCLA, kind of like I expected they would, at least on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, not so much. The running game, though, that's where they want to start, and that's where they want to end. They have a heck of a matchup here. Thomas, 386 and 5 touchdowns. One of my favorite backs in college football, 6'2", 238, stop on a dime, cuts extremely well, sees the holes that they create for him. Cam Rising, 248, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 1,440 yards, 13 touchdowns, does have 3 picks. Rising, you really have to do a lot for them. Had a bad pick against UCLA, terrible pick against Florida that cost them the game. Rising, though, he's still a veteran leader who made a lot of plays on third down for them across the middle of the field against UCLA. This is a very watered-down receiving corps. Brant Cuvia, of course, his injury, the torn ACL, is really going to make things tough for these guys. You got Dalton Kincaid, though. He's got very strong hands. He was big in that game against the Bruins. 23 grabs, 324, team-high 5 touchdowns. Devon Valley as well. Really like him and what he can provide to the table. He's got some good downfield speed as well. Other than that, not much. You got Money Parks, who's gotten involved a good bit. Micah Bernard, they can get him the ball. He had a drop on a screen, a very crucial play against UCLA, though. So they also got him involved running the ball a good bit. So this is a very good offense. They do have some issues, though, like the depth at wide receiver. It's not great. The offensive line, they gave up some sacks against UCLA, some negative plays. Cam Rising, of course, he wasn't perfect by any means, but he did as much as he could. This is a very interesting unit for UCLA, Nick. I like what they got in Keaton Bills and Paul Molly, though, on the interior offensive line. The rest of the unit is a pretty young unit. I do think they have a strong matchup hedge here against the Trojans. So what do you expect the game plan to be? You think they're going to run the ball a lot and just look for play action? You think they'll open it up a little bit if their defense is kind of on edge like they were last week?
I do expect them to carry the ball a little bit more this game. So far this season, they have 256.3 yards per game passing and 201.5 yards per game rushing. Obviously, if you're a Utah fan, you want to see that number get a little bit higher. They're very similar to USC in sort of the points per game and points allowed. Utah has scored 40.3 points per game, just 0.1 more than USC, and they've given up 19 points per game, just 0.3 more than USC has. So I think these teams are very comparable, just different types of talent on this team. Tavion Thomas is a very talented back. Love what he can do on the ground, 5 touchdowns, 386 yards. Cam Rising is all the 70% completion percentage. The 3 interceptions are certainly a big concern. You want to see him cut down on it. That's something we highlighted in the offseason. Could he cut down on the interceptions? So far, he's got 3 interceptions, including 2 bad picks, like you highlighted. But the 13 touchdowns through the air, plus the 3 on the ground, very impressive for Cam Rising. Senior leader. He's run this offense now for a while, and he knows what he's doing. I expect him to run the ball a whole lot, spread the wealth between Thomas and Bernard. These 2 backs together have a very strong combo, and they could do a nice 1-2 punch. But also, if they need to throw the ball, they got the tight end play that they can get involved as well. And Ville is a really talented wide receiver who's leading the team in catches and has 3 total touchdowns as well. Kincaid has 5 touchdowns.
Looking at the USC defense, this is a unit that's obviously been called into question coming into the year. They have all this talent on offense. Can they get stops on defense? And for the most part, it's been a shaky effort. But they've been phenomenal in the second half of this year. Of course, they've been really getting torn up against the run. I think they did pretty well against Arizona State after a bumpy start in that game. They only allowed 88 on the ground. It's a very versatile group of backs. Emory Jones at quarterback. They got a lot of speed they can really attack you with. Held them to 88 yards. They've held the last 3 opponents to under 330 yards, under 331 rather, the last 3 contests, all Pac-12 opponents. And these aren't no slouches. Washington State, a talented offense that runs the air raid. Sun Devils, like I said, Oregon State kept them in line for the most part. The run defense, though, still a bit of an issue. They've really get gashed between the tackles. They've been getting really blown off the ball. That's Utah's bread and butter, so that's going to be a very big matchup for them. It's just a pretty talented unit, though. Just a lot of transfer. Solomon Byrd, they lose him a lot off the edge. Tua Pelotu, he's great for them. Defensive end, they'll line him up anywhere on this defense. He's great for them. Leads the team with 12.5 tackles for loss. He had a phenomenal effort against Washington State. We had 4 TFL. Also had 7 sacks. There's strong individual talent on this defense. I think it's kind of going underrated how much they really improved here. Early on in the season, it wasn't great. Stanford had a bit of a field day on them. But, the offensive struggles as of late, a little bit of struggles, have kind of taken a, is allowed the defense to take a back seat here because they're playing very consistent football at this moment in time. This is going to be their biggest challenge, of course, yet. But I think they've been very well against their opponents here over the last 3. 12 interceptions on the season. They had 4 picks against Oregon State, including one to close out that contest. I don't think those are fluke numbers. Of course, they did get, 3 of those picks against Rice. I do like Eric Gentry, phenomenal Arizona State transfer, 6'6", 200 pounds. That size playing linebacker is pretty ridiculous. He leads the team with 43 tackles. Mekhi Blackman, a strong corner who's got impressive man skills. Max Williams, you look at, another safety in Kalen Bullock, who's got phenomenal ball skills, who got ejected for targeting in that game, in that Washington State contest. So he should be back. This is a defense, Nick, that's clearly battle-tested, but I think it's been, again, very underrated how well they've played the last 3 weeks, because those are pretty talented offenses for this conference. Not a lot of people respect it, but how do you feel about the progress at this moment in time for Alex Grinch's unit?
Extremely underrated defense out in LA. Gentry and Lee, the two linebackers, lead the team in tackles. Both of them are having solid seasons. Gentry, 43 total tackles. Shane Lee, 35 tackles. Lee's got 1.5 sacks plus an interception. Gentry also has an interception and a sack. Now, these guys have been solid so far this season. I really like the talent that these two linebackers have. Blackman as well, playing at defensive back. 2 interceptions for him, 5 pass breakups, 26 total tackles. Max Williams having a solid year as well. 2 interceptions for him, plus the 31 tackles. I think there's a lot of talent in this defense that's certainly being underrated and not looked at as well. They definitely showed in the last 2 weeks this defense has played better as the season goes on. I'm very impressed with the improvement they showed, holding Washington State to 14 points. That's a high-flying offense with their quarterback that they have. Solid talent. Arizona State as well. Good offense. They held them to 25 points. I like this defense. I think they're going to continue to improve as the season goes on, and they certainly will be a strong defense come postseason.
Yeah, you look at USC, they give up a lot of yards, they do give up some big plays, but they do rank 6th in college football with a 63%, scoring percentage. That's a really good number. Their defense is tightening up when things count. They're the only team in the top 10, well, they're second rather, behind Middle Tennessee, 22 attempts. So they've had more attempts than these teams, and their number's still that low. So they're really tightening up in the end zone, or the red zone rather. It's a really underrated part of this football team. It's going to be a big test here, though, because they seem to be really outmatched when it comes to slowing down this running game. But that was kind of the same thing last week in Utah. This defense, very strange effort from them. I thought they'd be much better. I thought they'd be, from a physicality standpoint, much better. They got torn up by bounds, 203 rushing, 299 through the air, 500-plus yards, 8.2 yards per play. Oregon State, they shot themselves in the foot a lot. They had 400-plus yards. Florida, they beat them up in the trenches as well, 283 rushing yards. This is not the same defense from a year ago, Nick. I don't want to say that Devin Lloyd's responsible for everything, because this defensive line's certainly not been very productive. Van Fillinger's been a little disappointing. Gabe Reed, I like his production off the edge. Junior Tafuna as well at defensive tackle. These guys have just been very disappointing, really, up front. Mohamed Diabate coming over from Florida's big. Karen Reed, he was the secondary linebacker who stepped up for them. I do like the safety group. R.J. Hubert, Cole Bishop, they've certainly both had some errors, though, giving up plays downfield. They're first and second on the team in tackles. Bishop, at least phenomenal. We'll get him in the box and slow down the run. I like the corner duo. Clark Phillips, he got beat for a touchdown, but he's still a phenomenal corner. He can have. They were having him shadow Jake Bobo. He got beat by him for a score. But Jordan Addison, that's going to be his task here on Saturday. Jatavis Broughton. 2 veteran corners here, tasked with some very tall orders. I expect a lot of zone from Utah. I don't know if that's going to be the way they want to go, but I think that's the only thing you really do here. I don't trust, these guys that play man coverage consistently against this Trojan offense. That's not going to be the way to go. I think for this defense to step up, they're going to have to make plays coming off the edge, and their pass rush, Nick, has not really shown the ability to do that so far. Only 11 sacks, and of course the number is just a little bit skewed. They did have 5 against Arizona State. Only 2 sacks in the last 2 games, though. I do think they can make plays off the edge against those USC tackles, but on the interior with how they played so far, this might be a weak spot for them. What do you expect from a Utah defense that, over the last couple of days, is, the opinion has really shifted from me just because of that poor effort against the Bruins, and you match that with the week 1, the week 1 game against Florida. What are your thoughts on this defense that we expected a lot from this year?
We were both very high on this defense. They've sort of disappointed up to this point. Clark Phillips having a good season, 5 interceptions for him, plus the 12 total tackles. And I think the safety duo of Hubert and Bishop are definitely
9 and 38 tackles
respectively. And you look at Reed, he's got 35 tackles plus a sack and a half and 2 pass breakups and an interception for him. But, Devin Lloyd left this team, and we knew that was be a big hole to fill, but it seems to be that they're struggling to get the pressure that they used to get with Lloyd. They really cannot seem to get after the quarterback. The sack numbers are certainly a lot lower than you want to expect if you're a Utah fan. This defense has disappointed so far in some regards. Certainly the numbers they've given up are not terrible. You wanted to see this defense produce more like they did last year. They just really aren't living up to the expectation that we had. I don't know if it's just the pass rush just not being there or the interior really not working as well as it did last year, but this defense is struggling outside of the secondary, and they really can't really seem to get after the quarterback. It's allowing their opponents to get some time to be able to throw the ball.
And the vertical running game threat from UCLA was too much for those linebackers, and the Florida offense as well. Just the linebackers don't seem to have the same speed they did a season ago. Of course, they lost Lloyd and so it was definitely a big fall off. Utah defense, they're plenty capable. Tough matchup here. Looking at team comparison, pretty simple, straight across the board. USC, they have all the edges on offense. Utah, though, of course, they're very talented. Only about 2 guys to catch passes for them, and Kincaid and Vali. USC, they're deep as they come. Probably the nation's deepest receiving core. Running back, pretty deep at that position, but Utah's Tavion Thomas, love him. Michael Bernard, they're very productive running backs as well. Cam Rising, a veteran leader at quarterback. Offensive line, I'll give it to Utah. I do like USC's interior, but they've been giving up a lot of pressure, and Caleb Williams has really, prevented negative plays from occurring. And then defensive line-wise, I like what USC has. They're pretty deep on this defense. A lot of transfers on that side of the ball as well. I do like the D-line a little bit better for Utah. Of course, I really, talked about the toughness, but I do like their standalone talent a little bit more than the Trojans do. But they got plenty of guys. They move around, so you could really maybe even call that even. Linebacker, I want to give it to Utah, and I still will because I like Diabate and Kalen Reed. I think that's another one you could probably call even because Eric Gentry's been such a standout. Shane Lee as well. He's been impressive. I believe he's hurt. He might be coming back here. And then secondary, I'm going to give this one to Utah as well. I don't think USC's too far behind. They lead the nation in interceptions, but this is still an area that they've really not been tested in too much. I do think they did play very well against Washington State, though, so I do think that is notable, but still a unit that's really starting to earn it's got to really earn its respect. I think they certainly will here as the year goes on. I really think you can call it even across the board on defense, though, Nick. How do you feel? Might even change that here on our PowerPoint. But what do you disagree with here when we look at these team comparisons?
Personally, for me, the only thing I disagree with is the linebacking. I think I'll take the linebackers from USC at this current moment. I just think that Lee and Gentry together are a better duo than what Utah has. I love the production of these two so far. I think that Diabate and Reed are not bad, but I just would personally, if I was building a team, I would take Gentry and Lee right now, and I think that's the group that has the advantage for me.
Well, final thoughts on the prediction. I am a USC fan, so I will not be making a prediction. But I think the keys to the game, USC need to showcase that toughness versus the run. I think, protecting on the edge is also very key for the Trojans. Utah, defense must perform better in all facets. You had Charbonnet just ripping off runs on the edge. DTR making plays across the middle of the field. It was just a disaster for Utah on defense. And then make the possessions count because last week, like we saw, they got behind and the defense could not make up. So the offense was playing catch up the whole game. That's not their style. They want to be able to run the ball downhill and win at the point of attack. And just they couldn't do that anymore when they got down in the second half of this game. So they got to make those possessions count because you're probably going to be in for a same type of ball game here on Saturday, but being at home certainly will help. Nick, you have USC 35-24. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think USC is going to win this game simply because they have the talent on offense to outscore Utah. I think Utah's going to waste possessions. I know you said that's their key is make possessions count. I think that's going to be their fatal flaw on Saturday. They'll just waste a few possessions, a couple of bad punt situations, a couple of turnovers potentially. I think that's going to lead to USC getting the win. They'll be able to dominate the time of possession and really put up points when they need to. I think both defenses won't have the worst day, but I just think that this offense from USC will be able to use time of possession to their advantage and will be able to kind of coast their way to a victory.
Very excited for this one as a USC fan. Finally, a big test here in the Utes, who have, drastically disappointed, I'd say, at this moment in time. Still a very important game for the Trojans' respect. Nick, as always, appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.